Wade Fuller was 41 years old, and until that Saturday afternoon, he believed his marriage was solid. He was a marine logistics engineer, steady, dependable, the kind of man nobody looked at twice. His wife Diane was a hospital administrator who moved through life with the polished confidence of someone who always knew exactly what she had and exactly what she wanted. What she didn't know was that the quiet man she'd been slowly erasing from her plans had spent 7 years building a luxury yacht rental company worth $1.2 million, registered under a name she'd never think to search. She didn't know because he never told her. He never told anyone. Then his cousin sent a photo to a group chat, a joke about someone living lavishly out on the harbor. Wade looked at the image and went completely still. The yacht in that photo was his, the champagne on that deck was his, and the woman in the white sundress, laughing with another man's hand on her back, was his wife. What Wade did next, she never saw coming. Neither did he. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The kitchen was quiet at 5:47 in the morning. Wade Fuller liked it that way. He sat at the head of the table with both hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee, his phone propped against the sugar bowl he never used. The house was dark except for the light above the stove, a warm yellow strip that Diane always left on overnight. Outside the window, the neighborhood sat still. No cars, no dogs, just the soft, heavy quiet of a Friday that hadn't started yet. Wade took a slow sip and read the message on his screen. It was from Terrence, his maintenance lead. Sent at 5:31 a.m., which meant Terrence had been at the yard before sunrise, a fact Wade noted and appreciated without comment. Bilge pump on Vessel 2 is pulling slow. Recommend full swap before weekend charters. Parts in stock. Need your go-ahead. Wade set his mug down. He read it once more. Then he typed back, "Approved. Get it done before noon. Log the swap in the maintenance record." He sent it, set the phone face down on the table, and picked his coffee back up. 4 texts, maybe 90 seconds. That was how most problems got handled when you stayed ahead of them. Azure Tide Ventures had been his for 7 years now. 3 luxury yachts, 2 pontoon cruisers, a dock manager, a small maintenance crew, and a client list that had grown steadily and quietly through word of mouth. Corporate retreats, anniversary charters, birthday parties for people who wanted to feel like they'd arrived somewhere. The company cleared more money in a good quarter than his engineering salary did in 6 months. The LLC was registered under his mother's maiden name, Caldwell, and the business address ran through a mail service 2 towns over. Nobody in Wade's personal life knew any of that, not his co-workers at the Gulf Coast shipping firm where he spent his weekdays running marine logistics, not the neighbors who waved at him over the fence, not the guys he played cards with twice a month, not Diane. He wasn't hiding it from her because he didn't trust her. He was hiding it because his father had taught him, through a very expensive lesson that cost the family everything when Wade was 14, that you do not show what you're building until it is built. You do not let the world weigh in on something that is still becoming. You protect it. You document it. You grow it in the quiet, and then one day it simply exists, fully formed and legally sound, and nobody can take credit for it, and nobody can talk you out of it. That was the code. Wade had lived by it so long it didn't feel like hiding. It felt like discipline. He heard the bedroom door open upstairs, footsteps on the hallway floor. Soft, deliberate. Then the bathroom. Then, after a few minutes, Diane appeared at the top of the stairs in her robe, hair pulled back, moving the way she always did in the morning, like a woman who had somewhere to be and was already planning for it before breakfast. She came downstairs, glanced at Wade, and went straight to the coffee maker. "You're up early," she said. "Always am." She poured her cup and leaned against the counter. She was beautiful, still, genuinely. with the kind of composed, careful grace that had caught his eye 12 years ago at a fundraiser where neither of them had known anyone else. She had laughed at something he said and touched his arm, and that had been that. "I'm going out tomorrow," she said. "Saturday. Some of the hospital people are getting together. Dinner, maybe drinks after. Might be a late one." Wade nodded. "Anyone I know?" "Probably not. It's more the admin side." She wrapped both hands around her mug. "You don't mind?" "Course not." He meant it. "Have fun." She gave him a small smile, the kind that was polite without being warm, the kind that said thank you for not making this complicated. Then she took her coffee and went back upstairs, and the kitchen was quiet again. Wade sat with that for a moment. Then he picked up his phone, opened his email, and moved on. By Friday evening, the house had settled into its usual rhythm. Diane made dinner, salmon, rice, a salad she dressed herself, and they ate mostly in comfortable silence, the television on low in the background. She asked about his week. He asked about hers. She mentioned a staffing issue at the hospital. He mentioned traffic on the bridge. It was easy, ordinary, the kind of evening that felt like nothing at all. After dinner, Wade did the dishes while Diane read on the couch. Around 9:30, she went up to bed. He followed 20 minutes later. He was almost asleep when his phone buzzed on the nightstand. A push notification from the Azure Tide app. A new booking request. He picked it up, squinting slightly in the dark. New reservation, Cerulean Lady. Client, B. Ashworth. Date, Saturday. Package, Champagne Sunset Charter. Full rate. Wade looked at it for a few seconds. The Cerulean Lady was his best vessel. 62 feet, teak deck, a cabin that clients always photographed. She booked fast on weekends. This was a good reservation. He tapped approve, set the phone back on the nightstand, and reached over to turn off the lamp. The room went dark. He closed his eyes. Wade told Diane he was heading out early. She was standing at the bathroom mirror when he knocked on the open door, her hair half done, a tube of mascara in one hand. She glanced at him in the reflection. "Boatyard thing?" she said. He almost smiled at that. She knew he disappeared on weekend mornings sometimes. She had never once asked what kind of boat. "Routine check," he said. "I'll be back by noon." She turned back to the mirror. "I'll probably be gone by then." "All right." He leaned against the door frame for a second, watching her. "Have a good time." "I will." He left. The boatyard smelled like salt water and engine oil, which Wade had always found more calming than any candle Diane ever bought for the house. He pulled in just after 7:30, parked in his usual spot beside the storage shed, and walked the dock to where the Cerulean Lady sat in her slip, still and enormous in the morning light. Otto Reeves was already aboard. He was 62 feet of vessel, and Otto moved around her like she was 40, checking lines, testing cleats, running his hand along the rail, the way a man checks something he is personally responsible for. He was 55 years old, thick through the shoulders, with a gray beard kept short, and a face that didn't do much with its expressions. 6 years at Azure Tide. Before that, 22 years in the Navy. He had never once been late to anything. "Morning," Wade said, stepping aboard. "Bilge pumps in," Otto said, not looking up. "Terrence got it done by 10 yesterday. Logged and signed." "Good." Wade walked the deck slowly. The teak was clean. The cabin glass was spotless. Through the cabin door, he could see the champagne. 2 bottles in a silver ice bucket on the main table, 2 more in the mini-fridge below the bar. Crystal glasses. A small arrangement of white flowers Otto must have added himself. "Champagne set," Otto said, coming up beside him. "I see that." Wade picked up one of the glasses and held it to the light. "Spotless." He set it back down. "Charter crew ready?" "Marcus and Yolanda. They'll be here by 10:30. Client said noon departure." Wade gave the cabin one more look, then stepped back out onto the deck. The water in the slip was green-gray and slow-moving. A pelican sat on the far piling, completely unbothered. "She's good," Wade said. "She's always good," Otto said. That was the full extent of their conversation about it. Two men who trusted each other's work and didn't need to say so. Wade was home by 11:15. The house was empty. Diane's car was gone. Her good perfume was still hanging faintly in the bedroom air. He ate lunch alone, watched 20 minutes of a game he didn't care about, and then took his laptop to the back patio to work through a logistics report he owed his supervisor by Monday. The afternoon moved slowly. The neighborhood was quiet. He refilled his coffee twice. At 4:22, his phone buzzed on the table. A group text. His cousin Darnell, sending to the family thread. The message was a photo. Below it, Darnell had typed, "Who out here living like this?" with 3 fire emojis and a laughing face. Wade picked the phone up. The photo was taken from a distance, someone on a bridge or a pier, catching the shot on a phone camera. The water was gold and flat in the late afternoon light, and there in the frame, gliding through the harbor like it owned the water, was the cerulean lady. Wade recognized her immediately. The lines, the teak, the navy stripe along her hull. His eyes moved to the deck. A woman in a white sundress stood at the rail. She had a champagne glass in her hand. Her head was tilted back, and she was laughing at something, her whole posture open and easy in a way Wade couldn't remember seeing in a very long time. A man stood behind her. His hand was on her back, low, comfortable, like it had been there before, like it belonged there. Wade zoomed in with 2 fingers. The woman was Diane. He looked at the man. Dark hair, well-dressed, big watch, big smile. Nobody Wade had ever seen before. He stared at the photo for a long moment. Around him, the patio, the yard, the quiet neighborhood, all of it stayed exactly the same. Nothing moved. Nothing shifted. The world did not crack open the way it probably should have. Wade set the phone face down on the table. He sat still for a count of 10. Then he picked it back up, stood, and walked inside to where his truck keys hung by the door. Otto was still at the yard when Wade pulled in. He looked up from the maintenance clipboard when he heard the truck, and something in Wade's face, or maybe the absence of something, made him set the clipboard down. "Pull the full booking file on Ashworth," Wade said. Otto didn't ask why. He pulled up the tablet, navigated to the client records, and handed it across. Wade read it standing up. Brendan Ashworth, 4 reservations total. The current charter, today, was the 4th. Before that, 3 prior bookings, 3 Saturdays, 3 champagne packages. The first one was 8 months ago. Wade had approved every single one of them himself. He stood at the dock's edge with the tablet in his hands and read through the dates slowly, one by one. 8 months, 6 months, 4 months. Today, 4 Saturdays. 4 times he had looked at that name on a screen and tapped approve without a second thought. He looked out at the water. The sun was going down now, burning orange across the harbor. Somewhere out there, the cerulean lady was still running, his boat, his champagne, his crew, carrying his wife and a man whose name he had personally greenlit 4 times over. Wade sat down on the dock. He held the tablet in both hands and read the file again from the top. Diane came home at 9:14 Sunday morning. Wade heard her key in the lock from the kitchen, where he was on his second cup of coffee. He didn't move. He listened to the small sounds of her entry, the door, her bag hitting the bench in the foyer, her shoes coming off. Normal sounds, practiced sounds. She appeared in the kitchen doorway a moment later. Fresh jeans, a blouse he recognized but hadn't seen in a while. Her hair was down and clean. No perfume, just soap and the faint neutral smell of someone who had showered somewhere else and made sure of it. "Hey," she said. She gave him a small, tired smile. The kind that said long night without making a production of it. "You're up early." "Always am," Wade said. She crossed to the refrigerator and pulled out the orange juice. poured herself a glass like it was any other Sunday. Her movements were easy, unhurried. "How was your night?" Wade asked. "Good." She leaned against the counter, glass in both hands. "Dinner ran way later than I expected. Keisha wouldn't let anybody leave." A small laugh. "You know how she gets. I just ended up staying at her place. Didn't want to drive that late." She looked at him steadily when she said it. Not too long. Not too short. Just right. Wade nodded once. "Sounds like a good night." Something crossed her face. So fast it was almost nothing. Relief, maybe. The specific relief of a woman whose story landed without a crack. "It was," she said. "I'm going to go shower." Actually, shower. Another small laugh, softer this time. An invitation for him to smile back. Wade gave her just enough of one. She took her orange juice upstairs. He listened to her footsteps cross the bedroom floor above him, listened to the bathroom door click shut, listened to the shower run. Then he picked up his phone and called Paulette. She answered on the second ring. No greeting, just, "You're calling on a Sunday morning. Talk." So he did. He told her about the photo, about the doc, about Otto pulling the file and the 4 booking dates lined up like a calendar someone else had been keeping. He told her the man's name, Brendan Ashworth, and he told her he didn't know how long it had been going on. Not yet. But that 4 Saturdays was just what was on paper. Paulette was quiet the entire time he spoke. That was the thing about his sister. She did not interrupt. She did not gasp. She absorbed. When he finished, there was a pause. Then she said, "Does she know about Azurtide?" "No." "You're sure?" "Positive." Another pause, shorter this time. "Good. Keep it that way." Her voice was even, controlled. But Wade knew Paulette well enough to hear what was underneath it. A cold, quiet fury being held very still. "Don't change a thing, Wade. Not one account, not one password. Don't move anything. Don't cancel anything. You act exactly like you've been acting. That's the plan." "Good." A breath. "I'm going to send you a name. She's an attorney. She's who you call next." Nadia Brooks answered, like someone who had been at her desk for hours, which, Wade would later learn, she usually had been. He gave her the outline, the affair, the yacht, the booking history. She listened without interrupting him either, and when he finished, she asked him exactly 2 questions. "Is the rental company documented cleanly?" "Yes." "Do you want to protect it or weaponize it?" Wade thought for 3 seconds. "Both." "All right." No hesitation, no pause to absorb anything. She had already moved ahead of the conversation. "Here's what you're going to do. You're going to document everything you find, and you are not going to touch anything else. Don't close accounts. Don't move money. Don't confront anyone. You let her believe you have no idea anything is wrong." A beat. "Can you do that?" "Already doing it," Wade said. "Good. Send me whatever financial records you can pull from your joint accounts going back 2 years. I'll tell you what I'm looking at once I see it." He pulled the records that night. Diane was asleep upstairs. The house was dark and quiet, the only light coming from his laptop screen at the kitchen table. He went through the joint account statements methodically, month by month, column by column, the way he read any report. Looking for the structure beneath the numbers, he found it inside 20 minutes. Small transfers. Never the same amount twice. Never large enough to trigger the automatic flags the bank used to notify both account holders. Amounts like $310, like $475, like $290, scattered across 14 months, timed irregularly enough that no single month looked alarming on its own. He opened a blank document and started a list. By the time he was done, he had counted it out 3 times because he wanted to be sure. $47,000. 14 months of careful, patient, deliberately sized transfers, gone from their joint account into somewhere he couldn't see from here. Wade sat back in his chair. He thought about the mascara tube in her hand yesterday morning. The easy way she had turned back to the mirror. I'll probably be gone by then. She had not been planning a Saturday outing. She had been planning to leave him, long before he ever knew a single thing was wrong. He closed the laptop. The kitchen went dark. Nadia Brooks's office was on the 14th floor of a glass building downtown, with a view of the harbor that Wade suspected she never looked at. Her desk was clean, in the way that meant organized, not empty. Everything in a specific place, for a specific reason. She stood when he came in and shook his hand once, firm, and gestured to the chair across from her. No small talk. Wade appreciated that. He set both folders on the desk. She opened the first one. Azure Tides documentation, LLC formation papers, operating agreements, revenue records, the original registration. She read the way he imagined surgeons worked. Precise. No wasted motion. Her eyes moved down each page and she turned it before he expected her to. She did not say anything for a while. Wade sat still and let her work. Finally, she closed the folder and set it flat on the desk with both hands. How long before the marriage was this structured? She asked. The LLC was formed 9 years ago. We've been married 7. Nadia nodded once. And the business restructuring? The one that adjusted the valuation? When was that? 2 years ago. Before or after the counseling? Wade looked at her. After. She picked up her pen. Made a small note in the margin of her legal pad. That's important. The restructuring complicates any argument that Azure Tide became marital property through contribution during the marriage, especially with the way the accounts are separated. She set the pen down. She has no claim to it. Not a viable one. Not with this documentation. Wade said nothing. She doesn't know it exists, Nadia said. It wasn't a question. No. And no one in your shared social circle knows. No one. Nadia looked at him for a moment. Just one. Then, as far as any proceeding is concerned, she is walking into a room she doesn't know has a floor missing. She opened the second folder. Now, let's talk about the transfer. She went through his documentation the same way, column by column, date by date. He had organized it chronologically, which she seemed to expect. When she reached the last page, she set it down beside the first folder and aligned the edges. 14 months, she said. Yes, and the amounts were calibrated to stay below the joint notification threshold. Every one of them. Nadia tapped the edge of the folder once with 2 fingers. This is documentable financial misconduct within the marriage. It is directly relevant to asset division in a divorce proceeding. It is also the thing that will make her attorney sit her down and tell her that an aggressive strategy is not in her best interest. A pause. Because the moment she pushes, we respond with this. And then her negotiating position is not a claim. It is a liability. She reached for a fresh legal pad. I'm going to begin preparing the filing, she said, quietly. Nothing moves, nothing is served, until you tell me. Understood. She looked up from the pad. You're sure you want to wait? I'm sure, Wade said. She studied him for exactly 1 second. Then she wrote something down and said, All right. Paulette flew in on Thursday. She didn't stay in a hotel. She never did. She took the guest room down the hall from the master bedroom, set her rolling bag in the corner, and had her laptop open on the kitchen table inside 20 minutes of walking through the door. Diane was at work. That was intentional. Paulette did not say much when she arrived. She hugged Wade once, tight, and a beat longer than usual, and then let go and got to work. That was how she had always operated. The hug was the feeling. Everything after it was the action. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table. Diane's coffee mug was still in the drying rack beside the sink. Her reading glasses were folded on the counter near the window, right where she always left them. Paulette did not look at any of it. She looked at the documents. They went through every account, every asset, every holding Wade had, joint and individual, business and personal. Paulette moved through the numbers in her precise, unhurried way, asking questions, making notes, occasionally pulling something up on her laptop to cross-reference. She flagged 3 accounts that needed minor restructuring to further insulate Azure Tide's non-marital standing. She drafted transfer documentation for 2 of them on the spot. She did not say anything about Diane while they worked. Not one word. But Wade watched his sister's jaw tighten every time she ran a calculation that included the $47,000 gap. He watched her press her lips together when she reviewed the timing of the transfers against the joint account history. He watched her set her pen down and pick it back up. She was furious. He knew it. She knew he knew it. Neither of them needed to name it. By the time they finished, the light through the kitchen window had gone from afternoon white to the dim amber of early evening. Paulette closed her laptop and gathered her notes into a clean stack. She capped her pen. Then she reached across the table and put her hand over his. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Paulette left Friday morning. Wade carried her bag to her rental car, and they stood in the driveway for a moment in the cool air. She looked at him the way she had when he was 14, and their father's business collapsed, like she was taking inventory of how much damage had been done and calculating what he had left to work with. She must have liked the numbers she found. She nodded once. "Call me when Nadia moves," she said. "You'll be the first." She got in the car and drove away without looking back. That was Paulette. You didn't look back at things you had already accounted for. That evening, Wade came home to a quiet house. The lights in the kitchen were off. Diane's work bag was on the chair by the door. She was already upstairs. He climbed the steps without hurrying and pushed the bedroom door open enough to see. She was asleep, facing away from him. Her phone was on the nightstand, face down. He stood there for a moment. Then he pulled the door almost shut and walked down the hall to his home office. He sat down at his desk, opened his laptop, and typed in the name he had been sitting on for a week. Brendan Ashworth. The search results came back fast. There was a lot of surface, a LinkedIn profile with a professional headshot, a company website for Ashworth Development Group, a few local business journal features from a couple of years back. Wade read all of it. Then he dug deeper. Ashworth was 44, based out of the metro area, mid-level commercial and residential real estate developer. The company website listed 3 completed projects and had a 4th listed as in development, a mixed-use commercial complex on the east side of the city, projected at $11 million. There were renderings. There was a quote from Ashworth about revitalizing the corridor. Wade opened a new tab and looked at the public filing records. The picture that came together was instructive. Ashworth Development Group was leveraged, heavily. The completed projects had performed adequately, but not outstandingly. The financing structure for the East Side development was complicated, a layered deal involving at least 2 separate lending groups, with one of them being a firm Wade recognized, not because he had any direct stake in it, but because his senior contact at the Gulf Coast Shipping Company, a man named Gerald Pratt, who had been in commercial finance for 30 years before crossing into logistics consulting, had mentioned that firm by name in a professional conversation 8 months ago. Wade was not a part of that deal. He had no controlling interest, no leverage, but he had a relationship with a man who knew the people involved. He closed that tab, filed it. Then his phone rang. Otto. Another booking came through the concierge line, Otto said. His voice was flat and even, the way it always was. Ashworth, Cerulean Lady again, next Saturday. He added the overnight option this time. Full-day charter into a dockside evening and a morning departure Sunday. Wade leaned back in his chair. "You want me to decline it?" Otto asked. There was no judgment in the question. Otto was not the kind of man who pushed. He asked what he needed to ask and then waited. "Confirm it," Wade said. "Full service." Otto was quiet for a second. "Just one." "All right," he said. "Make sure the crew knows it's a priority booking. Top shelf everything." "Understood." Another pause, briefer this time. "You're something else, Wade." Good night, Otto. He set the phone face down on the desk and looked at the ceiling for a moment. Brendan Ashworth was coming back. He would step onto the cerulean lady with the confidence of a man who had found a thing that worked for him. A stunning boat, a seamless crew, an evening that made him look like someone worth impressing. He had no idea who owned any of it. He had no idea he had been writing checks to the husband, and now he was coming back for more. Wade almost felt something. He was not sure what to call it. He turned back to his laptop and spent the next hour being warm to a life that had already decided to leave him. He reviewed the household calendar Diane kept shared between their phones. He noted the events she had added: work dinners, a weekend conference, a friend's birthday. He noted the ones she had marked private. He did not touch anything. He just looked. He catalogued. He remembered what Nadia told him. Let them keep believing you are exactly who they think you are. So that was what he did. In the days that followed, he made Diane coffee in the morning. He asked about her week. He was present at dinner in the easy, undemanding way that she had come to expect from him. He watched her shoulders lower. He watched the small, careful tension she carried at the base of her neck begin to ease. She thought she was safe. That told him everything he needed to know about her conscience. By midweek, the booking confirmation had come through on the Azure Tide dashboard. Full charter, overnight package, cerulean lady, B. Ashworth. Wade looked at it for a long moment. He let out a slow breath. The trap was open. Now he waited. The tablet was on the kitchen counter. Diane had left for work 20 minutes earlier. Wade had heard her keys, heard the door, heard her car back out of the driveway. He had been standing at the sink, rinsing his coffee mug, when he noticed the tablet's screen still glowing. She had left it unlocked. He set the mug down slowly. He had never gone looking. Not once in the weeks since the photo, since the booking files, since the $47,000. He had gathered what came to him, and he had let Nadia handle the rest. He was not the kind of man who dug through someone's personal things out of spite or desperation, but the screen was right there, and it was still synced to Diane's phone. He could see the notification bar from where he stood. He picked it up. He sat at the kitchen table for the next 2 hours. He read carefully. He did not rush. He moved through the message threads and the call logs the way he moved through a maintenance report or a contract, completely, without skipping, without letting emotion blur the details. The first thing he confirmed was what he already knew. Brendan Ashworth, consistent contact. The shape of it was clear. The tone of the messages, the frequency, the specific kind of shorthand that develops between two people who have spent real time together. Then he scrolled back further and further. The messages went back 3 years. Wade set the tablet flat on the table. He looked at the wall across from him for a moment. Then he picked it up again and kept reading. 3 years ago. He did the math without wanting to. 3 years ago was 6 months after the couple's counseling. The sessions that Diane had brought up one quiet Sunday evening, her voice soft, her eyes wet at the edges, telling him she felt like they were drifting, and she didn't want to lose what they had. She had found a therapist. She had already called and made the appointment. He remembered that night clearly. He had reached across the table and taken her hand. He had been grateful. He remembered being genuinely grateful that she wanted to try. They had gone every other week for 4 months. He had said true things in that room, uncomfortable things, things about his own distances and his own silences, and the ways he knew he had made her feel like a secondary consideration when work ran long. He had laid himself open in front of a stranger because Diane had asked him to, and because he believed it mattered. She had cried in the 3rd session. Real tears, or what he had believed, were real tears. She had said she wanted to fight for their marriage. She had said she didn't want to become the kind of couple that just gave up. The therapist had called it a breakthrough. Brendan Ashworth's name appeared in the messages for the first time the month after that session. Wade put the tablet down again. He looked at the table, at the grain of the wood, at the coffee ring Paulette had left last week that he hadn't wiped away yet. Small things, solid things, things that were actually what they appeared to be. She had not cried in that therapist's office because she wanted to save her marriage. She had cried because she was building a story. A clean, documented, witnessed story. A story where she was the wife who had tried everything, who had gone to counseling, who had been vulnerable, who had done the work, so that when the marriage ended, and she had already decided it would end, nobody could say she hadn't tried. Nobody could point at her and say she just walked away. She had used him as a prop in her own story. She had used a therapist's office as a stage. She had let him say true things out loud about his failures while she was already composing a different life in her mind. The cruelest part was not the affair. The cruelest part was that the hardest thing Wade had done in that marriage, opening himself up in that room, saying the things that were difficult to say, had meant nothing to her, less than nothing. It had been useful to her. That was all. He stood up from the table. He put the tablet back exactly where she had left it, screen still angled the same way. He was precise about that. Then he walked out the front door, got into his car, and sat in the driveway. He did not start the engine. He sat there for 45 minutes. He breathed. He let the weight of it settle fully because he knew that was the only way through it. Not around, not under. Straight through. All at once. So there was nothing left to ambush him later. When he was ready, he picked up his phone. Nadia answered on the second ring. He did not let her speak. "Move everything," he said. His voice was quiet, completely level. There was nothing in it that shook. He ended the call. He sat for another moment in the still car. Then he got out, walked back through the front door, found Diane in the kitchen. She must have come home for lunch, and kissed her on the cheek. "What do you want for dinner?" he asked. Wade called Otto at 7:15 the next morning. He was already dressed, coffee made, standing at the kitchen window, watching the light come up slow and gray over the neighbor's roof. "Saturday's charter," Wade said. "I need you to prep the cerulean lady." "Already planned on it," Otto said. His voice was easy, unhurried. "Full service?" "Full service." Wade paused. "And I need you to install the new guest log system before then. The digital one we talked about at the start of the season." A brief silence. "The time-stamped boarding system." "That's the one." "I can have it running by Thursday," Otto said. "Retroactive entries for all prior charters, too. Once it syncs with the existing records, it'll pull everything. Every booking, every name, every date." "Good," Wade said. "Make sure the Ashworth charters are all in there. All 4 of them." Otto did not respond immediately. When he did, his voice had the same flat, careful tone it always carried when he understood exactly what was happening and had made his decision about it. "Understood," he said. That was all either of them needed. Nadia called at 9. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. She never did. "Filing is finalized," she said. "Everything is ready. I just need your word after Saturday, and I can have it served by Monday morning." "Monday morning," Wade repeated. "That works. The financial documentation is clean," she continued. "Paulette's restructuring is airtight. I've reviewed everything she sent over. If Diane's attorney tries to reach for Azure Tide, there is nothing to hold on to. It is structured correctly. It is documented correctly. And it predates any argument she could make about marital contribution. And the transfers? The $47,000 is fully documented. Dates, amounts, destination accounts. It is the first thing I will put in front of her attorney." A pause. "Diane hired someone, by the way. Gerald Hutchins." Wade knew the name, knew the reputation. Hutchins was the kind of attorney who made noise, press releases and aggressive posturing, and a lot of motion filings designed to make the other side feel like they were standing in front of an oncoming train. "He'll come in loud," Wade said. Yes, Nadia said. And then he'll look at our documentation and advise her to settle. She said it the way someone states a weather forecast. Confident. Based on data. Not a boast, just a fact she had already calculated and moved past. Wade said, I'll call you Sunday. I'll be ready, Nadia said, and hung up. Paulette had already sent everything by the time he checked his email mid-morning. A single message, with 3 attachments and a subject line that read, Done. Call me if you have questions. You won't. He opened each file. She was right. He didn't have questions. The documentation was exactly what it needed to be. Precise, organized, each asset clearly traced and categorized. The Azure Tide structure was walled off completely. Not hidden, just clean. The difference mattered. Hidden things could be found and used against you. Clean things just stood there, solid and unmovable, and dared anyone to argue with them. He wrote back 2 words. Thank you. She replied in under a minute. Saturday. Let me know. He made the call to Ashworth just after noon. He used Azure Tide's concierge line, a separate number that routed through the company's business account, the same number Ashworth had called twice before to manage his bookings. Ashworth picked up on the 3rd ring. Mr. Ashworth, Wade said. His voice was professional, warm but not familiar. This is the concierge team at Azure Tide Ventures calling about your booking this Saturday. Yeah, the cerulean lady. We're all confirmed, right? Ashworth's voice was easy, the voice of a man who expected things to be in order because he was paying for them to be. Completely confirmed, sir, Wade said. That's actually why I'm reaching out. You're one of our top repeat clients this season, and we'd like to offer you a complimentary upgrade. When you return to dock Saturday evening, we'll have a private dockside reception set up for you. Light catering, drinks, just a small thank you from our end for your continued business. There was a short pause. Then Ashworth said, That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. Wonderful, Wade said. We'll have everything ready when you come in. Appreciate it, Ashworth said. That's the kind of service that keeps people coming back. We count on it, Wade said pleasantly. He ended the call. He set the phone down on the desk and sat for a moment. He felt nothing dramatic. No surge of satisfaction, no heat in his chest. Just the same calm, settled feeling of a man who has checked the last item off a list he has been building for weeks. Everything was in place. That evening, Wade went to the closet and pulled out a clean shirt. Dark navy, well-fitted, the kind of shirt he wore when he needed to be taken seriously without trying. He shook it out and set it up on the ironing board. He worked slowly, smoothed each section flat before the iron touched it. Collar first, then the placket, then each sleeve, one at a time. When he was finished, he laid the shirt carefully across the back of the chair by the window. He looked at it for a moment. Then he turned off the light and went to bed. He slept well. Wade arrived at the dock at 6 o'clock. The cerulean lady was not due back until 7. That was intentional. He parked, walked down to the water, and shook hands with the catering manager, a quiet woman named Rosa, who ran a tight operation and never asked unnecessary questions. She had set everything up exactly as he requested: a linen-covered table, chilled drinks, trays of food arranged neatly beneath the warm glow of the dock lights, which had just clicked on as the sky deepened to orange. "Looks good," Wade said. "Thank you, sir." She nodded once and went back to her work. Wade walked to the end of the dock and stood there. The Gulf was flat and copper-colored in the last of the evening light. A pelican glided low across the water and disappeared around the far bend. Somewhere in the distance, a boat engine hummed, then faded. Wade watched the water and did not think about anything in particular. He simply stood there, hands loose at his sides, the navy shirt sitting clean against his shoulders. He was not nervous. That surprised him a little, the first time he checked. But it made sense when he thought about it. Nervous was for people who weren't sure what was coming. Wade knew exactly what was coming. He just had to wait. At 6:58, the cerulean lady came around the bend. She moved slow and easy through the flat water, the way she always did on the return leg. Engine low, sails down, the last of the sun catching her white hull and throwing orange light across the deck. She was a beautiful boat. Wade had always thought so. He had spent a lot of time and money making sure she stayed that way. He watched her come in. He did not move. Otto was at the edge of the dock handling the lines, the same as always. Wade had told him where to be and what to do. Nothing more, nothing less. Otto had nodded and said fine. The cerulean lady eased into the slip. Ropes caught and cleated. The engine went quiet. And then Brendan Ashworth stepped off the boat. He looked like a man who had just had the best day of his life. He was tanned, loosened up, moving with the confident, slightly heavy stride of someone who had been drinking expensive champagne for several hours and felt entitled to every drop. He wore a linen shirt, cream-colored, open at the collar, a watch that caught the dock lights when he moved his wrist. He came down the gangway and saw the catering table and stopped walking for just a second, a little pause of pleasure, and then smiled the smile of a man who approved of what his money had purchased. He looked around the dock with that smile still on his face. Then he saw Wade. He did not hesitate. That was the thing about Brendan Ashworth. He did not hesitate, because hesitation was for men who were uncertain of their position in a room. And Brendan had never once believed he was anything but the most important person wherever he stood. He walked straight toward Wade with his hand already out. His other hand drifted briefly toward his jacket pocket. Force of habit. A man preparing to tip the help. Wade let him close the distance. Then he reached out and shook Brendan's hand. Firm, unhurried. He held it one beat longer than was comfortable. "Mr. Ashworth," Wade said, "glad you had a good evening." "Outstanding," Brendan said, still smiling. "Your team takes care of business, I'll say that." "We try to," Wade said. He did not let go of the handshake right away. "I don't think we've been formally introduced. My name is Wade Fuller." Brendan nodded, waiting for the rest of it. "I own Azure Tide Ventures," Wade said. The smile stayed on Brendan's face for almost 2 full seconds after that, like a light that hadn't yet received the signal to turn off. Then something shifted behind his eyes. Wade watched it happen. Watched the exact moment Brendan's mind started moving backward through the months, through the bookings, the checks, the champagne, the sunsets, the crew that smiled and poured and said, "Of course, Mr. Ashworth," and arrived at the place where all of it led. The same name, the same man, the husband. The smile was gone. He didn't speak. Wade looked at him calmly. "You've chartered my boat 4 times this year," he said. "I approved every booking myself." Behind Brendan, Diane stepped off the gangway. She saw Wade and stopped moving entirely. The color left her face the way water drains from a glass. Fast, then completely. Her mouth opened slightly. No words came. She looked at Wade, then at Brendan, then back at Wade, and Wade could see her doing the same thing Brendan had just done, running the numbers, rebuilding the geometry of the last several months, trying to find a version of events that made sense. There wasn't one. Wade looked at her. "Hey, baby," he said, quietly, evenly, 2 words with no anger in them whatsoever, which made them land harder than any shout could have. He turned back to Brendan. He did not raise his voice. He did not lean in. "Whatever she told you about our marriage," Wade said, "you should go back and look at that conversation again." He paused. "She's been moving money out of our joint accounts for over a year. Small amounts, steady, just under the threshold that would get noticed." He let that sit for exactly 1 breath. "I thought you should know." Brendan said nothing. Wade looked at Diane one last time. "Nadia will be in touch Monday morning," he said. Then he turned and walked back up the dock. He did not slow down. He did not look back. Brendan Ashworth stood at the end of the dock he had paid to use, next to a woman whose story had just come apart at every seam, having shaken hands with the man who had owned every single piece of the evening he believed was his greatest move. The text came in at 9:14 on a Monday morning. Wade was at his desk reviewing a routing report when his phone lit up. 2 words from Nadia. Papers served. He read it once, set the phone face down on his desk, went back to the routing report. He finished the page before he allowed himself to feel anything at all. Then he leaned back in his chair and looked at the ceiling for exactly 5 seconds. That was it. That was the whole celebration. Diane had an attorney by Tuesday afternoon. Wade learned this through Nadia, who learned it through the formal response filing. The attorney was competent. Nadia said so without editorial, which meant she was not worried. A competent attorney working a losing hand was still working a losing hand. The first thing Diane's attorney did was go looking for assets. That was standard, expected. Wade had expected it 3 months ago, which was why Paulette had spent 2 weeks restructuring everything into positions that were not just protected, but obvious in their protection. The kind of clean, well-documented paper trail that communicated clearly to any opposing attorney. We saw you coming. Azure Tide Ventures surfaced within the first week of discovery. Wade imagined the moment Diane's attorney found it. He imagined the phone call to Diane, the explanation of what non-marital property meant, what the documentation showed, how far back the LLC formation went, how airtight the structure was. He imagined Diane's face during that call. He did not feel sorry for her. He felt nothing about it at all, actually, which told him something about how far he had come from that parking lot 6 weeks ago. The $47,000 changed everything. That was the pressure point Nadia had identified from the beginning, and she applied it exactly when it mattered. During the discovery phase, when Diane's attorney was still trying to build a case, Nadia put the documentation on the table. 14 months of transfers, amounts calibrated to stay just under the radar. A clear, consistent pattern with a clear beginning date. Diane's attorney went quiet for 2 days after that. Then he called Nadia and asked about settlement terms. It went fast after that. The way things go fast when one side has the facts and the other side has a story that no longer holds together. Diane kept the equity split on the marital home, roughly equal, clean, and straightforward. She kept her personal retirement accounts. She walked away from nothing she had not already earned, and she walked away from everything she had assumed she was entitled to. Azure Tide Ventures was never mentioned in the final settlement documents. Not once. Brendan Ashworth ended it before the ink was even dry. Wade did not know the specifics. He did not need to. What he knew came through channels the way things always come through channels in a city this size. Through Otto, who heard from a dockhand, who heard from someone in Brendan's circle. The story was simple. Brendan had asked questions after the dock. He had made inquiries about Diane's finances quietly, the way a man does when he is trying to confirm something he already suspects. What he found confirmed it. The picture she had painted of her independence, her resources, her situation, it had been painted with someone else's money. She had needed Brendan to believe she was already most of the way out. She had needed him to believe the door was practically open. He had believed her completely, because he had never once thought to check. Wade did not celebrate that either. He noted it the way he noted a closed account. Factually, completely, and without sentiment. Brendan's commercial development deal hit trouble around the same time. A financing complication within the lending group. Internal, procedural, entirely unconnected to Wade or anyone Wade had spoken to. The deal did not collapse. It simply stalled. Delayed reviews, restructured terms, a project that had been his centerpiece suddenly sitting in a waiting room with no clear exit date. Wade heard about it through the same professional connection he'd always had. He did not intervene. He did not need to. He simply noted it. The timing was its own kind of comment. Paulette called a family gathering 2 weeks after the papers were served. Wade did not attend. That was intentional. His presence would have made it about him, and it was not about him. Paulette sat with their mother, their aunts, 2 cousins, and a kitchen table full of people who loved Wade Fuller and were owed an honest account of what had happened. She gave them one. No editorializing, no anger performed for an audience, just facts, laid out in order, the way Paulette laid out everything, cleanly, completely, with nothing missing. Diane's version of events, the version where she was a woman who had simply grown apart from a distant, secretive husband, arrived in that family the same week and found no soil to grow in. Every door she might have walked through was already closed. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday. Nadia's office was on the 14th floor, and the afternoon light came in hard through the west windows. Wade signed where she indicated, 3 places. He read every line before he signed each one, not because he didn't trust Nadia, but because that was who he was. She handed him his copy. They shook hands. "You handled this well," she said. It was not a compliment she gave casually. "You did the work," Wade said. "You gave me the right materials," she said. He nodded once, picked up the folder, and walked out into the sun. The alarm was set for 6. Wade was already up at 5:15. He moved through the apartment the way he moved through everything, quietly, without wasted motion. The kitchen light stayed off. He knew where everything was. The coffee maker hissed and popped in the dark, and he stood at the window while it ran, looking out at the Gulf. The water was black and flat and enormous. The sky above it was just beginning to change. Not light yet, but the deepest blue loosening at the edges, the way night does when it finally decides to let go. He poured his coffee. He went downstairs. The apartment was temporary. He had chosen it that way on purpose. 3 blocks south, there was a waterfront property sitting in the final stages of escrow. A low, clean building on a half-acre lot, with a private dock running 40 feet out over the water. He had walked the dock twice. Both times he had stood at the end of it and looked out and felt something settle in him that had been unsettled for a long time. The closing was in 11 days. He was not counting, but he knew. Azure Tide had grown. The 4th yacht, a 58-foot Riviera he had been watching for 2 years, came available in January. He bought it outright, named it the tidal margin, which was an engineering term for something most people had never heard of. Otto had laughed when Wade told him the name. It was the first time Wade had heard Otto laugh in 6 years of working together. Otto had also received a raise in December, a substantial one. Wade had handed him an envelope at the end of a routine walkthrough, the same way he handed him anything else, without ceremony. Otto had looked at the number inside, looked up. "Wade, you earned it," Wade said. That was the entire conversation. Bookings were up 31% over the previous year. Nadia had referred 2 corporate clients to Azure Tide after the divorce was finalized, not as a favor, but because she believed in the product. She had taken Wade's call once since then, when he had a contract question about the new property. She answered on the 2nd ring and gave him 12 minutes of precise, useful guidance. He billed her a charter rate as a thank you. She accepted, without protest. That was the language they both spoke. The story had circulated. Wade had not told it. He never told it. He did not need to. He had Otto, and Otto had the dock. And a dock in a city this size was its own kind of telephone. The story moved the way true stories move, carefully, person to person, in the specific way people share things they do not want distorted, because the facts are already strange enough. The version that circulated was accurate. That was the part that satisfied Wade most. In the quiet way things satisfied him, not the telling of it, the accuracy of it. He had not stood on that dock and shouted. He had not made a scene. He had simply shown up on his own property, shaken a man's hand, and said what was true. The story that came back to him later was the same story he had lived. Nothing added. Nothing needed. He walked out onto the small dock behind his building now, coffee warm in his hand, the wood soft under his feet. He had brought one of Azure Tide's older runabouts around last week, a 24-foot center console he used for solo runs. It sat in the slip below him, rocking gently, lines holding. He stepped down into it. The engine turned over clean and even. He eased out of the slip without hurrying, the throttle low, the bow cutting a gentle line through still water. He did not put on music. He did not check his phone. He let the boat run at a quiet speed, until the lights of the shoreline were soft and distant, and the water in every direction was his and no one else's. Then he cut the engine. The Gulf went completely quiet. He sat in that quiet, and drank his coffee, and watched the light come. It started as a thin line, copper, then gold, where the water met the sky. It widened slowly, the way things widen when they are built to last. The surface of the water caught it and scattered it in all directions until it was everywhere at once. He was not thinking about Diane. He was not replaying the dock, not hearing her voice, not seeing the color leave her face, not measuring the weight of what he had said or what he had not said. That chapter was closed and documented and shelved, and Wade Fuller did not reread closed chapters. He was thinking about the property, the dock that would be his in 11 days, the tidal margin, and where he wanted to take her next season. A rooting question Otto had raised last week that deserved a better answer than the one Wade had given him. He was looking at the water ahead. He was thinking about what came next. She thought I had nothing hidden. She was right about that. I wasn't hiding anything. I was building it. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.